let's get the thoughts right now of Benedict Spence, the Conservative commentator, as I said, in a bit of a mood today. Not as much of a mood as I think the people are in Britain who are going to be going, I wonder where these Palestinian migrants are going to live, who've been educated and told and ruled by Hamas for years, telling them their main aim in life is to kill the infidel.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of infidels here in the UK.
I mean,
I'm among them.
Are any of these people railway engineers? I'd be prepared to make an exception.
Probably. No, I mean, either the mother or the father is definitely a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. That's normally the case.
Well, I don't need a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. I'd just like basic public services to work. But there shouldn't... Let's be very clear here. It actually doesn't matter where they come from in the world. Britain does not owe a livelihood to all and sundry of humanity just because their own countries have collapsed. We can do what we can to support our allies, and indeed, other countries as well, to get themselves stable. But at some point, Western countries have to turn around and stop feeling guilty about what may or may not have happened during empire, most of which is not in fact true.
Yeah. Your country's a hellhole because of the people who rule you, not our problem.
It is not the sins of the white man exclusively what his ancestors did however many hundred years ago. At some point, we have to turn around to these countries and say, why are you incapable of running a civilized society? And if you're incapable of doing that, what is there to recommend you coming to ours?
Exactly.
That is the key thing. Now, when it comes to women and children fleeing a war or something like that, that's very different, especially given that half of them would like to go, well, all of them would like to go back. When the men stay and they try to fight, they try to get rid of an extremist ideology, when they try to rebuild something, we can all sit here and go, out of the goodness of our hearts, children, yes, fine, look after them, whilst their fathers. But if your society is in fact engaged in a millennia-long blood feud with people you don't like, and your response is to then get upset when you lose because you keep going to war with the bigger, stronger country, which, by the way, is the more civilized of the two, I think there needs to be a real lack of sympathy for those people. At some point, intelligent life is meant to learn from its mistakes. Germany had to learn.
Exactly.
Japan had to learn. Why do these people not?
But is this family, they've got a long history of basically trying to oust Hamas and promote good relations with their neighbours. I somehow doubt it.
I'm sure
I
there
imagine
are
it'd be
a few
rather
people
dangerous.
like
Yes,
that.
I imagine it'd be rather dangerous to do so.
Yeah.
I don't think it's our problem.
No.
I just don't think it's our problem. I think we've got enough problems here already, and we've imported an awful lot of it. And I just think it's really, really simple. Unless you can prove you are going to benefit the people already here, then I'm afraid you don't get to come here.
I mean, ill-educated people will shout and scream about the Balfour Declaration, never having read it or knowing what it is. It's the United Nations that set up the state of it, that passed, that voted democratically to say, actually, yes, these people are allowed to have their own country. Why it is, actually, because this is the thing, you'll say that it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's not our problem. But there are a lot of people who want to make it our problem. We haven't been in that part of the world. We haven't been a power in almost a century that's worth sort of talking about, if we're being completely honest. And yet somehow it is going to be made our problem. And the most toxic thing is, it's people at the top of our own society who wring their hands and go, well, it is our problem and we have to.
Well, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, I mean, again, hiring every human rights lawyer, all his mates. We've got, Attorney General Lord Hermer, again, I mean, got some very, very questionable views about Britain's past and present, handing over Chagos Islands to Mauritius, who've got no legal claim to it whatsoever. Absolute load of abject nonsense. And by the way, one of the judges, it's fascinating, one of the judges involved in the ruling that the Mauritians bizarrely have a claim to the Chagos Islands is actually someone who's defended Russia in the past, a Chinese judge. I mean, give me a break. Again, it's the same when we have these rulings about wars from the United Nations Security Council and these votes. You think, I'm sorry, anything that China or Russia has a view on, not caring about.
But even forget China or Russia. At least China or Russia are major players. What has a Nicaraguan or Somali judge got to do with us?
Or South African. I mean, again, I don't sort out your own country.
The international community. If you line them all up, you'd say, I don't want to live in 90% of those countries. But when they all get together in a club, we're supposed to take them seriously.
And by the way, if you want to know why FIFA and organisations like that are completely corrupt, because you got one member, one vote. How's that working, everybody? There's a clue to an awful lot of the world are basically banana republics and operate on a level of corruption and incompetence. I mean, we think our lot are bad. Oh my God! But here's the thing: we've got an activist foreign secretary, David Lammy. He's talked about us paying reparations to Caribbean
member
countries.
for the Caribbean. Yeah,
well, exactly. I mean, last I looked, David Lammy, you're as British as I am, and yet for some reason you think you're Caribbean. No, I'm sorry, you're British, mate. I hate to break it to you, but this is the thing. I just find we've got these activists in power. How bad is this going to get? Because look, a lawyer would have suggested to this family, hey, why don't you apply under this Ukraine scheme? This idiot judge. Who happens to be the son of an colleague of mine at Guardian, who's a very activist, lefty campaigner, and doesn't necessarily mean he has the same views, but I would suggest from this ruling he does. We know that these personal inputs of these judges is definitely going into these things, these interpretations. This isn't just one family. There is no reason on this that we wouldn't be having 200,000 or 300,000 people from Gaza turning up on our shores making the same claim.
Of course.
No reason at all.
Of course, and that's the point, is that it's an interpretation of laws that under which we used to have, you were able to deport people. Now is just the sense of actually all and sundry can come in because they've got a sob story. But I mean, you were talking about David Lammy that's just there. He's not the worst example. The worst example is north of the border. It's the Scottish National Party, who position themselves as if Scotland are the great victims of British imperialism. They were at the forefront of going out, but they talk about themselves as a colony. And we get that in Wales increasingly as well. People talk, we were colonised as well. Everybody's a victim. And of course, everybody's a victim. Everybody's therefore out with their hands asking for things. It's not sustainable. It's a complete inversion of history. It's a complete lie. But you base a society on that, everybody will be on the take, not just from here, but across the world.
Absolutely. And you wonder again, we talked about on the show yesterday, and you get all these youngsters who aren't proud of their country, wouldn't fight for it, think it's racist. It's like, well, what a surprise if that's what you tell them. Let's talk about, just sticking with the Middle East just briefly, Donald Trump doubling down on this Saturday noon deadline for Hamas to release all the hostages. Benjamin Netanyahu now saying, well, they all come out, or the ceasefire is over. I mean, at the end of the day, if Hamas refused to release the 3 hostages, and it seems to be a little bit up in the air about whether they'd mean 3 or all the hostages, I don't think they've got all the hostages to actually release. I worry that most of them aren't alive. I mean, the majority of them are no longer alive, and that's why they're delaying it. Hamas tried to play a little game. They wanted to play a little game with the ceasefire. Oh, well, that's gone back on you rather badly, hasn't it? If they don't, then Hamas would have reneged on the ceasefire terms, and Netanyahu and the IDF would be totally entitled to go back in. But the reality is, you haven't got anything over Hamas because Hamas don't care 2 figs about the Palestinian people in Gaza. I don't want them to come here. I also don't want them to die in Gaza.
I think I would err on the side of actually there's not many hostages who are still alive, and I would base that actually on the state of some of the hostages that have been.
Saturday was just horrific.
They are coming out looking like...
They did get goodie bags though, Benedict. They did. As Yvonne Ridley pointed out, they got goodie bags.
Yes, they weren't told that their relatives had been slaughtered and were made to say in front of the whole world that they were looking forward to, but they got a party bag. They got some, little rolls and some sweeties and things like that. Lovely. No, I mean, this isn't going to end with a ceasefire. This is going to end, I'm afraid to say, how most wars that resolve themselves do end, and that is one side crushing the other. That means a lot more people are probably going to die. I know that this is so strange. We in the West have forgotten how wars work.
I hear again and again. Radio 4 constantly have experts on saying, of course, all wars, they don't even say most, all wars end with negotiations.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. That's literally not how all wars, or even most wars end.
Do people not know how many German civilians, forget all the soldiers, how many German civilians died in the Second World War? The destruction that was visited.
How many Japanese civilians?
We didn't, but we literally dropped the weapons of mass destruction on them. Wars end when one side batters the other into submission, and negotiations often is simply, it's a surrender document.
Yes.
It is some French people on one side and Germans in a railway carriage going, these are the terms of surrender. I'm sorry you lost, but that's how it is.
But this is the thing, the so-called experts don't even understand some basic... I mean, this is GCSE history
Did
stuff.
Saddam Hussein negotiate his own defeat? I don't remember that happening.
It is
but it must have happened. The lawyers say
Gaddafi from that tunnel as he was dragged out. It's quite bizarre, isn't it? I just want to also talk to you about an announcement yesterday we had in a court that the Metropolitan Police, when they carry out vetting, re-vetting of officers, as they started to do a year or two ago, after we just had some extraordinary cases, Wayne Couzens and others, horrific, violent criminal acts by serving police officers. Big investigation of those officers. We discovered a load of them hadn't been vetted properly, or literally been interviewed on Zoom and the like. And then we discovered a lot of them had actually been accused of crimes, nothing had been done. They re-vetted a whole load of people and wanted to sack them. extraordinarily, a police officer able to take them to court, basically saying, well, you can't sack me. And a court has ruled that even if people now fail vetting, they can't be sacked. Again, the courts are insane.
Just think, what is it? I mean, not only are we at a stage where police officers don't arrest people who actually break the law, when they're found to have failed their own standards, they can't get rid of them. So we've got police officers who could be dangerous criminals, not going out to arrest people who are dangerous criminals. It's a wonderful system, isn't it? And you struggle to see why it is that great swathes of society are actually grinding to a halt. I can't possibly imagine why that is. It's not like the actual administration of violence on behalf of the state doesn't work, because it's filled with people who are abusing it and also don't act on it. I mean, that's bread and butter stuff. That's what is the point of the state? Protect your borders, uphold the law. We don't do either of those things. Why should we expect anything else to work?
It's kind of soul-destroying, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
Why do you think I'm so morose all the time?
You are.
Yeah, I see the evidence that's in front of me, and I kind of go, well, it's nice that in the United States they've elected somebody who is now trying. Whatever you think, he's certainly trying to do some very fundamental things.
He's trying to do something.
In this country, we just go, well, maybe we give away an island or two, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, then we can assuage ourselves. I just think all these people need to go and join like a monastery if they want to just sort of hit themselves over the head with
bring back the monastery.
Well, if that's what they. But I've just managed to find it finally. I just want to find this note on another story which involves our jail crisis. Of course, we've got massively overcrowded jails. Another crisis we've just walked into, and apparently one of the big issues is that we've got prisoners who get released from jail. Obviously, I would say most of them far too early, and then they're being sent back to jail because the Chief Inspector of Probation, this is Martin Jones, he says because it's the easiest thing to do. But these are people who have broken the terms, either committing a crime or in most cases just not fulfilling the terms of their probation. So, for instance, turning up to appointments repeatedly, failing to turn up and then being sent back to jail. Now, this actually seems to be a problem. Now, the extraordinary is the campaigners who sort of, talking about this are saying, well, the solution to this is not to send people to jail for short terms and not to recall them. But that's the whole point. I mean, that's literally, it's like, for instance, if you don't fulfil your community sentence, if we all think those work, which I'm not entirely sure they do, then you should go to jail, because that's the deal. If you don't turn up, you go to jail. I mean, it is extraordinary. Again, the people who are involved in the top level of our criminal justice system don't get it.
They don't get it. No concept of carrot and stick approach as to how human behaviour actually works.
Yeah, but also, if someone is just too drunk or out of their head on drugs to turn up to their probation meeting, well...
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. They're just a scam.
Well, what should we do with them at that point?
Well, you wouldn't want to go and touch them and drag them to prison. You might get your hands dirty.
They're mostly sitting outside my local tube station, as far as I can tell.
This is one of the things about living in a major city in the UK now, is how noticeable it is that there are people who are homeless, on drugs, or mentally ill, who are just free to roam the streets. And you see the same people, if you walk past the same place, they don't get moved on, they don't get taken away, they don't give given help, and they don't get arrested. They are just left to their own devices until something dreadful happens, which of course we've been talking about.
Either to them or by them.
About the Nottingham stabber, for instance, that example. And it's merciful that it doesn't happen on a much larger scale, but it is increasing. You can't move away from that fact that it's becoming more common. To which the response is, oh, well, maybe knives are a little bit too sharp and we should blunt those. Rather than address the core issues, it's to fiddle around the edges so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting. That's the attitude in this country.
Absolutely. It's another one of those happy Wednesdays.
And now for the weather. Light showers.
Have you thought of doing, children's parties?
I tell you what, children that were raised by me would have a much more realistic outlook, and therefore would build more, stronger societies, because they'd understand how the world works.
No, I'm all for that. I'm all for that.